Aaron, are you going to talk about the Marvel Fresh Start books? When are you going to talk about the Marvel Fresh Start books? Are you ever going to talk about those Marvel Fresh Start books? Well... okay. Hey everyone, it's me, Aaron, and as you could probably tell from that long, drawn-out opening, today on Comic Class we are finally taking a look at the Marvel Fresh Start books. In fact, we have 2 episodes of Comic Class coming out because we have 12 issues to talk about today. I thought, you know what, it would probably be easier on you guys if you were looking for me talking about a specific book if I just divide it into 6 issues in this first episode and then 6 issues in the second episode coming out later today. Don't worry, you don't have to wait an extra day for your second episode of Comic Class. It's all coming out in the exact same day. So there you go. That's something to look forward to. But before I actually start talking about the Marvel Fresh Start books, let me talk about Marvel Fresh Start in general, just about how it's gone down so far. And I gotta say, when Marvel came in here and announced that they were doing yet another relaunch, roughly 6 months after the last big relaunch, so soon after the last big relaunch that the trades from that relaunch hadn't even come out yet, I didn't handle it well. I think had a massive freak out is the best way to sum that up. Yeah, I will admit, I kind of just couldn't take it anymore. That was my breaking point. I could not take another relaunch. There had been so many of them, and as I said, this relaunch was now going to be so soon after the last relaunch. The trades from that last relaunch weren't even done coming out just yet. And the last relaunch came in here and renumbered all the books back to their original numbering, which kind of seems like they were saying, yeah, we're not doing it anymore. We're just gonna, it's just gonna be this one number, everybody, just going on. And then they came in here and said, guess what? We're not doing that, everybody. We're relaunching. They're all going back to number 1. Kinda, sorta. We're still keeping the original numbering. And I came in here and was like, I don't even know what's happening. I just see another relaunch and now multiple numbers coming in. I don't know what's happening. What's going on here? So yeah, I was not really looking forward to this. But then as the news came out about all the creative teams on these books, I looked at it and went, you know what? This does look like a good relaunch. It looks like you got the right people on the right books. I'm very intrigued to see what happens with all these titles. But man, just the fact that it's another relaunch, all these books with brand new number 1s, I just can't take this anymore. However, you guys might have noticed that a couple months back, I came in here and gave you my opinions on all the creative teams and all the directions for these books that had been announced so far. And I said, this is part 1 because I know what Marvel's going to do. They're going to come in here and then next month there will be 20 more books that get announced to be going back to number 1. And I'll have to come in here and talk about them. So next month I'll come in here and talk about all those books. And then I never came in here with a part 2 because Marvel didn't do that. Marvel really only launched like 12 books for this big relaunch. That's not how Marvel does things. This was a fairly small relaunch, and the creative teams on these books were really damn good. It looks like rather than Marvel just going, we gotta go big, we gotta go big, we gotta go big, it feels like they just focused like a laser beam on Fresh Start. And I gotta say, this is actually really refreshing. Okay, it's not some giant line-wide relaunch. All those books out there that were doing just fine on their own, you're letting them continue on their own. And Marvel has also realized, you know what? We've been trying to appeal more to like the indie audience, the younger audience out there. They don't really dig the whole constant relaunch thing. What if the books we were aiming at them didn't get relaunched on this one? And they didn't do that. And I appreciate that. And the few books that they did put out there are really easy for me to keep track of. And yes, I made a big stink about the whole, I don't even know what you're doing with your numbering thing in here. Actually seeing it in action, seeing this thing where on the cover of every issue is issue number 1, then directly underneath that, legacy numbering, the official number of it. Oh, okay. That's actually easy to keep track of. Again, as I said in that announcement video, they didn't announce that very well because I had no idea what they were doing, and then they had to come out less than a day after they made the announcement and correct themselves because they realized nobody knew what they were talking about. So yeah, they didn't do the best job saying that up, but seeing what they actually had planned, okay. That actually works. Because yes, I'm sick of you constantly renumbering your books, but at the same time, I understand you kind of have to. I've talked about this many times, but the medium of comic books, it has trouble keeping up with, the internet and every other form of entertainment that's out there. You need to do something that constantly reminds people, hey, big, new, fresh thing, right here, look at this. And relaunching back to #1 is the easiest way to do that, but people have now gotten sick of that. This idea that, hey, yeah, we do have to relaunch back to #1 when we start a new big thing, a big new jumping on point. We kind of have to do that, but we will keep that legacy numbering going on every issue so you can keep track of them. It will not confuse the customers. Because, man, I remember I was working in a comic shop when Marvel really started doing this thing where every single year all their books go back to #1. People had no idea what was going on. This is so much easier to keep track of. And again, they didn't really explain it to us all that well, but the plan that they had in mind is pretty good. And again, just to go back to it, the fact that this isn't a line-wide thing. It's focused, like a laser beam. It's focused to the point where they can come in here and actually spotlight these books. And they didn't come in here and just keep putting out their new #1s. Yes, Marvel does have more #1s coming on the way because that's just how comic books work. There has to be brand new #1s coming out. But Marvel isn't talking about books coming out 5 months after the start of Fresh Start, saying these are still part of Fresh Start. No, those are just brand new #1s. And there's only like one new #1 coming out in this month, or 2 #1s coming out this month. That's so much easier to keep track of than the 3 or 4 #1s that Marvel was literally putting out every single week for a while there. Oh my goodness. This is kind of how it should be done. Like Marvel earlier today announced a Shuri book. Shuri #1 coming out, and I was looking at it like, okay, well you got that. You got X-Men Black #1 coming out. Anything else for that month? No? Well, at least nothing yet so far that they've announced, but it's like, okay, people can keep track of that. That's not too hard to keep track of. And they're not spinning out some giant, massive crossover event thing that will confuse new readers when they pick up that issue because they won't know what the giant crossover event thing is that they keep referencing. No, they're going to kind of be their own isolated thing so that new readers can really get into them. Okay. It's so weird. It's like Marvel is finally learning from the mistakes of their past. But okay, as I said, in this video today, I'm going to talk about 6 of these Fresh Start books, and then later today, in the second comic class video, I'm going to cover the next 6 books. And I'm going to be covering these in chronological order. However, I'm not going to cover Avengers #1 because I dedicate an entire episode to just talking about that. I will come in here with a little update and just say, I'm still enjoying the book. To me, the Avengers don't really feel like the Avengers until they're all sitting down together and kind of just being themselves around each other, not when they're going out there and just punching big monsters. To me, the Avengers were all more about the stuff that they did off hours, the stuff that they did when they were just living with each other, that kind of stuff, the interactions that they had on a human level rather than on a superhuman level, but we're not there yet. At the moment in that series, they're still charging in to save the day, so we haven't had time for that stuff yet, so I fully understand that. To me, the team is still being assembled, so I can't quite judge how the book is going to be when everything is in place. But at the moment, I'm still intrigued by it, I'm still reading it, I'm still enjoying it. I'm also not going to cover any of the mini-series, so Cosmic Ghost Rider, not really getting into that. In all honesty, I don't even know if that counts as a Fresh Start book. But Ant-Man and Wasp, that does count as a Fresh Start book, but I'm not really going to be covering that. I'm mostly just going to be sticking to the ongoing series. However, I will just say very quickly, I am really enjoying Ant-Man and Wasp. That is a super charming book. I love the dynamic between Scott Lang and Nadia Van Pym. I think that those two work very well together. I also think the artist does a great job on Scott Lang. I think that he gets all of his goofy expressions really good. Nadia looks a little bit old in that book. Like, Nadia's supposed to be like 15, but she looks like 20 in that book. Maybe it's just me. But that's really the only complaint as far as like art-wise goes. Everything else art-wise looks fantastic in that series. And Mark Waid does a great job of capturing, like I said, the dynamics between these two characters, but also just getting the down on his luck, just average Joe kind of character that Ant-Man is. Oh, look at that, I just covered that book. Never mind. So anyway, the other books that we are going to cover today are going to be Doctor Strange, Deadpool, Black Panther, Venom, Immortal Hulk, and Thor. Alright, we're going to start with Black Panther, and Black Panther is still being written by Ta-Nehisi Coates, but now it's being drawn by Daniel Acuna. And I gotta say, I've enjoyed Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Panther. He understands the character, he understands his world, he understands his history, he's got a firm grasp on all of that, and as someone who is a fan of Black Panther, I enjoy seeing a writer who really gets that character, and I think that he's come up with really imaginative stuff to put into that story, but I've been waiting for it to get nuts. Like, I've been waiting for that moment where it's like, okay, now we're doing something just insane. Just something that you never even imagined you'd see in a Black Panther book. All the other stuff I've seen there so far is like, okay, that's good. That feels like a Black Panther book. But I'm always looking for that thing where it's like, alright, where do you go to that next level beyond that? Where do you go to that next stage? This is it! This book was freaking awesome! This was the moment I was waiting for in this run. Basically, what's happening in this story is that many generations ago, the nation of Wakanda started a space program, and they sent travelers out into space, and they started just colonizing different planets, and now this space fleet of Wakanda is returning home to take over Earth, and they have abducted Black Panther himself, mind-wiped him so that he has no memory of his past, but he keeps getting like flickers of like Storm and other bits of his past coming back in there, and he's being treated as a slave, and he has to escape, and he joins this resistance of other people who are now fighting back against the evil space Wakandans. Oh my god, it's such a crazy concept. And yeah, he gets in there and joins up with this team. They now all have their own like high-tech space Black Panther suits, and they're going in there to fight these evil Wakandans who have been leading this intergalactic empire for generations. This is so insane to me in the best ways, because it's not that they just threw some crazy stuff in there. Anybody can just put a crazy thing in a book and then go, there, a crazy thing. If you're going to put something crazy into a book, you still have to be able to capture the spirit of the character. You have to be able to capture the heart of that character. What makes them important? And yeah, the stuff that he is having Black Panther go through in space, it's still big important messages, and the kinds of big important messages that the Black Panther series has always tackled. So yeah, he is absolutely finding a way to tell a Black Panther story in space. He has found a way to combine Black Panther with Star Wars. So I am absolutely blown away by what he has created here. But again, Acuna, man, when I heard that he was going to be the one working on this book and it was going to be space themed, I was like, that is a perfect match. That is one thing that I will go ahead and say about all the Marvel Fresh Start books. I think Marvel has amazing artists working over there. But I feel like in the past couple of years, they haven't quite had the right artist on the right book. And just because I'm talking about Black Panther, that is in no way me like making a reflection on the Black Panther series. The artist and the writer on that book were fantastic, but there have been other artists working on specific books over at Marvel over the past couple of years, in which I would look at the artist and I would go, you are an amazing, talented artist, but I don't know if this is the right title for you. I don't know if this is exactly where you can show off what you can really do. Every single one of the Marvel Fresh Start books, I look at and go, that is the exact right artist on the exact right book. You nailed it in one on that one. So yeah, Acuna, nailing it. This is absolutely some of the best stuff that I have seen him doing in his career, and he's had a pretty darn good career. So absolutely, Black Panther, if you have been waiting for that moment where this book goes to the next level, this is it. But again, if you've just been enjoying the book as it is, it's more of that as well. This really is like one of those best of both worlds situations. You get the big crazy sci-fi story, you get the really heart-touching personal story about T'Challa. It's everything that you could want in a space Black Panther series. Next up is Venom, and when I talked about this book's announcement, I said that I was kind of two minds about this, because on the one hand, I just don't really care about Venom. I loved him when I was a kid, but as I got older, my interest in him just really dropped. And it kind of feels like that's how everyone else was as well, because Venom used to be huge, and then his popularity kind of dropped, and Marvel just started doing whatever they could to try and make him popular again. It's like, alright, give the symbiote over to Matt Gargan. Well, he's kind of interesting for a little bit, but no, people just aren't really digging it. Okay, take that symbiote away from him, hand it over to Flash Thompson. Oh, now he's big! Now people are liking him, and I really like Flash Thompson as Venom. I thought that book was fantastic. But then it eventually started to die off as well. It started to drop. So let's send him into space. Oh, no one's really digging that either. Okay, well, let's bring him back to Earth, and we're gonna put the symbiote on yet another person, and it's gonna be a criminal. Oh man, Venom is going to go dark again. What? Nobody's really digging that one either. Well, if we just hand it back over to Eddie Brock, and that's when that, like, unique combination of new readers who had always heard of Eddie Brock and the older readers who had nostalgia for Eddie Brock kind of lined up at the exact right moment, and everyone was like, oh, okay, I'll check that out. So Venom is kind of a big thing again, and I have a feeling with this title, he's going to remain a big thing for a while, because if you've been watching this channel, you know Donny Cates is one of my favorite writers out there. He's that guy who I have been championing for the longest time. Back when he was doing minor indie stuff over at Dark Horse and at Heavy Metal, I was propping those books up going, this guy is going to be something big. This guy is doing amazing stuff. Someone snatched this dude up, and Marvel snatched that dude up, and yeah, he has been blowing people away. People have been loving everything he's been putting out, and the Venom series is no exception, because yeah, man, I have no love for Eddie Brock. I just don't really care about that character anymore. I wish we had stuck with Flash Thompson, but as I said, I understand why Eddie Brock is back. We're at that unique little point where all the older fans want Eddie Brock back and the newer fans want to learn about Eddie Brock. It's all kind of lined up. I understand. This is just the time when he's coming back. I get it. It happens. But man, Donny Cates made me interested in where this book is going. Granted, I'm still not that interested in Eddie Brock as a character, but everything unfolding in this story is really damn fascinating. Now, basically what is happening in here is that the symbiote is kind of going nuts. Eddie doesn't know why. It starts mutating into something new, and I won't really spoil where it goes, but it has to do with who was the god of the symbiotes. Yeah, they all came from a planet. There had to be like some kind of a deity force, some kind of a big ruling force behind them all. That is what the storyline is, and that is why I love Donny Cates. When I looked at the end of the first issue, and you see basically the symbiote god descending down, I went, no one else could think of this but Donny Cates. The guy who came up with a series that was all about an Earth overrun by vampires, so the humans living in space sent a holy powered mech girl down to Earth to stop them. That's the dude who would come up with this idea. Everybody should read that book, by the way. That is an amazing book. Interceptor, check it out. Now, I will say, I do have a few complaints in here, and if I can be completely, totally honest with you guys, I feel like it's kind of being a little bit overhyped. Like, I went on Comic Book Roundup, and it's got an average score of over a 9. That is huge. Hardly any book is able to crack that. And I was reading, it's like, it's really good. I don't know if I would go quite that high. I do have a few problems in it, and one of them is that, yes, the symbiote is kind of going nuts, and Eddie is talking about how it's like, yes, all it wants is darkness. Yes, I feel this darkness inside of me. Oh, the hunger. Like, he just keeps bringing up all those, like, go-to nouns and verbs that have to do with Venom, darkness, hunger, oh, pain, oh, all these terrible things. And yeah, I get that. You're trying to set the tone, and it does set the tone. He is able to fully set that tone, but then I feel like he keeps going a little bit further past where he was comfortable saying that tone. I feel like it becomes a little bit of overkill. Like, I feel it becomes a little bit repetitive at some times in here. So yeah, I think you need to tap back on that a little bit. That's my one big complaint with it. But there is another thing in here that I just found very interesting, which is that, okay, in this one, you know, Eddie and the symbiote, they were always they were like this. They were with each other. They were on the same side. Flash and the symbiote, you know, eventually they start working together, but in the beginning, they were really opposed to each other. And Flash also got the symbiote through this Project Rebirth program from the government in which they injected him with the symbiote. And this storyline, it starts with Eddie talking about how, oh, the symbiote, it's all darkness, oh, it wants all these things, and the symbiote is going against Eddie. And then this guy pops up and he tells Eddie, listen, you weren't the first one to get this symbiote. In fact, you know that Thompson kid who got through a government program? Yeah, he wasn't even the first one to do that. There were other symbiotes out there. Back during Vietnam, the government was injecting people with symbiotes to go out there and fight in the war. And now you have to go and round those guys up. And I was looking at this like, okay, the symbiote is fighting Eddie, and Eddie has to do this thing that has to do with the program that Flash was involved in, and has to do with the government thing that Flash was part of. Donny Cates came in here and said that he had this story in mind for a while, I want to know like exactly when he came up with this storyline, because I have a feeling this was a Flash Thompson Venom storyline. Like, if you go back and you think about those moments where Flash was like on the run, where he was at his lowest during like the Rick Remender run on his book, and then you just picture this storyline taking place with Flash right at that exact moment, it feels like it lines up really well. Like, I have a really hard time seeing this as an original Eddie Brock storyline and not convincing myself, yeah, I think this was a Flash Thompson storyline, and when you went back to Eddie, you just changed the character's name over. Okay, whatever. It's still really good. It's still a really darn good Venom story. It's still super original. It's exactly the kind of stuff I would expect from a Donny Cates Venom book. It's exactly the kind of stuff that I was hoping for from a Donny Cates Venom book. So yeah, I'm still really enjoying it. Still excited to see where it goes. It's just something that I couldn't get out of my head. It feels like this was supposed to be Flash Thompson. Next up, moving into the books that were released in June, we're going to start with Deadpool. And man, I am of two minds on this one. Like I mentioned with Venom, I like to go on Comic Roundup and look at what the average score is that all the critics are giving these books. And so far, all the Marvel Fresh Start books have gotten amazing reviews. All of them have been just widely applauded. Everyone's enjoying them. The Deadpool one was the only one, though, that did not get good reviews. People really did not dig the Deadpool book. And I went into this and I read it kind of with that in my mind of, oh, okay, people didn't really like this one. Well, I'll go into it, see what I think. And maybe it's just because I went in there with low expectations, but I really did enjoy this. I really did have a fun time with it. If you enjoy Scotty Young's style of humor, like if you enjoy his Image series, I Hate Fairyland, this is a perfect fit for that. In fact, Marvel, I'm telling you, I think Scotty Young probably wants to do a crossover between Deadpool and I Hate Fairyland. If he does want to do that, let him do it. Let it just happen. Because I was reading this book going, you could easily just mash those two things together. That would be a great crossover to see. Because it is that exact same style of humor, and that humor does work for a Deadpool book. Problem is, and I think this is the reason why it was getting so many negative reviews, it's that he is coming fresh off the heels of the Jerry Dugan run on Deadpool. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think that's the best run anyone has ever had on Deadpool. I was a massive fan of that run. Jerry Dugan is the guy who turned me into a Deadpool fan. He's the guy who came in here and said, no, it's not all just goofy one-liners and stuff and him just killing people. No, I'm going to give Deadpool some heart. A tragic backstory. I'm going to give him friends. I'm going to have a big soap opera going on here of just double crosses and going back and forth and all this different stuff. Oh my goodness, it's going to be so tense. And yeah, it was. It was an incredible read. It tugged at my heartstrings. It had me waiting to see what would happen next. I cannot imagine someone writing a Deadpool story that I would want to read more than that. And Scotty Young, unfortunately, has to follow that act. And at the end of Jerry Dugan's run, he basically went, listen, I have messed this character up top to bottom, just sideways, just this is a character who can never go back to being the Deadpool that everyone wants to see. I have taken him on the emotional roller coaster ride of a lifetime. He will never be able to recover from this. But that means that no other writer can ever approach this character, and that ain't how comic books work. You gotta set the character back to zero so the next guy can come in here and tell their story. So at the end of that, he basically gets a big old mind wipe and he returns to being the wacky, goofy Deadpool that everybody knew. And that's the character that we're reading in this book. And I'm just looking at it like, it's fun. If you have never read Deadpool and you just want a book that's fun, here you go. It's great. Enjoy that book. But oh man, it's kind of like going from a 5-course meal at a big fancy restaurant to eating McDonald's French fries. I like McDonald's French fries. Ain't nothing wrong with McDonald's French fries. Yeah, they're loaded in salt. I like salt. Who cares? It's fine. It's an enjoyable thing just to pick up and munch. But yeah, it's hard to go to that immediately after that big 5-course meal. So yeah, I feel like Scotty Young was just in a no-win situation on this one. I feel like he could have turned in the best book of his career. Just had people laughing from the first page to the last. Everybody at the end of it will have been like, yeah, but all that stuff from the Dugan run is gone and I'm sad about that now. Thumbs down. So yeah, I feel bad for the guy. There is like nothing he could have done to win people over on this one. That being said, it's still not, like, perfect. I'm still not coming in here and going, well, the only problem I have with it is that it's not the last guy's run on this book. No, I still have some problems with it. He is working in a new Merc office, and he does address the fact that, yeah, I wasn't really a Merc for a while there, and now I've lost all my business, and I don't even remember why. I had a memory wipe. I don't know what happened there with all those other things going on, so I can't even address all of that. So I have to rebuild my business. I have to do something big that gets people excited for me again. And I love that his office is in a mall. Like, he gets his clothes blown off at one point in this, and he goes walking in the mall just butt naked, and everybody's just like, oh, hey, Deadpool, looks like you're having a rough day. I kind of dig that. I actually kind of like this setting that he's in, but he's got Negasonic Teenage Warhead in there as his secretary, and that's, you know, she was in the movie. You gotta put her in here somewhere. But man, they keep making one joke after another about her name, and that joke gets slammed into the ground so quick. He just keeps beating that joke over and over, and yeah, by like halfway through the issue, I was like, this isn't funny anymore, and there's still half an issue left of you talking about this. And yeah, so that was one joke that kind of fell flat. And one thing that I will say about all the Marvel Fresh Start books is that they're all supersized books, so they all cost an extra $1 or an extra $2. And you guys know my feeling on that. I'm not exactly a fan of it, mostly because whenever Marvel does that, they just have a regular size story in there, but then they'll throw in some backup story that nobody asked for and doesn't really apply to anything, and we didn't really need it, and it's just there so that they can charge you an extra $1. None of these books did that. All these books, yes, they're extra size, but it's because they gave you an extra size story. So I'm actually okay with that. Except for the Deadpool book. The Deadpool book is the one that did actually have an extra size issue because it had a backup story in there that didn't apply to anything. And it was Deadpool just trying to come up with a new origin story for himself. So he kept just taking other characters' origin stories and saying that they became Deadpool at the end of their origin story. I found this issue to be really funny, to be really enjoyable. I thought the Deadpool dialogue was good. I didn't enjoy any of this backup story. I thought everything in the backup story kind of fell flat. Because it really was just, hey, Peter Parker, he goes to a science exhibit. Oh my goodness, he's bit by a spider. Now he's Deadpool. There's not even really much of a joke there at the end of it. It's just, hey, Deadpool, yay, okay. It is going to tie into something later, because they do reveal that one of the origin stories they tells actually was not him stealing another character's origin story. It was actually another character's origin story who was going to be a villain later on in this series. So it did have a purpose, but yeah, it's kind of a weak excuse to have an extra size issue with some backup stuff in there. I feel like that is one of the things that fell flat in this issue. Next up, Doctor Strange by Mark Waid. And before I get into this, let me just go ahead and say, Jason Aaron's run on Doctor Strange, great. Donny Cates' run on Doctor Strange, great. I love both of them. But I never actually felt like I was reading a Doctor Strange book when I read those. They were great, hilarious, imaginative, adventurous stories. But Doctor Strange just never really felt like Doctor Strange to me in there. And I think it's because both Donny Cates and Jason Aaron really like taking big cosmic level characters and just bringing them down to earth. That was something that was a huge part of both their storylines, especially Jason Aaron. He just destroyed magic, so now Doctor Strange was just kind of being a street level hero all over again. And Donny Cates, he turned him into a veterinarian, so he was just kind of working a 9-to-5 job all over again. Yeah, I really enjoy those stories. I thought they were great takes on this character, but never really quite felt like Doctor Strange to me. It felt like this was just some brand new character who had Doctor Strange-ish qualities to him, but I was enjoying his adventures. Just not on the same level that I look for in a Doctor Strange book. This book opens up with Doctor Strange. He's facing off against some giant demon creature. He rips a hole in reality, escapes in there, sees the demons coming after him. He uses his magic to sew back up the rift in time and space, and then reality gets sewn back together again, and the panels are gorgeous on this. When he returns everything to reality, I was looking at that for like a solid 30 seconds trying to tell if this was a drawing or just an actual photo. Like, I got handed to not just the artist, but the colorist, the inker, everybody on this just nailed the execution insistent on that. Because that's exactly what they wanted to go for. It's, I escaped this big magical thing back in reality. Make that look as close to a real-life photograph as you possibly can. They know that. I just looked at this, and I looked at the dialogue that Doctor Strange was saying, and I was like, it's Doctor Strange! This is exactly what I think of when I think of Doctor Strange. This is it. Right here. I'm like, oh man. So is that what this whole storyline's gonna be? It's just gonna be Doctor Strange just being Doctor Strange? Okay, that's cool. It then immediately cuts to like 7 years later. And it's going right from when Doctor Strange was at his high, like, yes, I am the Sorcerer Supreme. Nothing can stop me. 7 years later, on Tuesday, Doctor Strange went blind in his left eye. Whoa! Wow! Talk about a gut punch from the highest highs to a low. And they say, well, he didn't actually go blind, as in he couldn't see. Out of his left eye, he could no longer see magic. He could no longer see the magical world around him. On Thursday, his right eye followed. Then, as the next couple days went by, he could no longer hear the voices in his house. He could no longer tell that any magic was there. His magical items stopped responding to him. He lost his connection with magic. And you might be saying, well, that's exactly what happened in Jason Aaron's run. Magic died in that. That's not what's happening here. Doctor Strange is just getting old. Doctor Strange has been at this a while, and he's just suffering exhaustion. He has burned out himself. That's actually a really unique story to tell with Doctor Strange. And as I've said many times, I want to see these characters age. I want to see them get older. I want to see what happens to them as they grow up. And Doctor Strange, he's had white hair since he was introduced. He's already been grown up, but there's always more growing to do. And this idea that, yeah, man, you just kind of burn yourself out. That's part of getting older. And I was looking at this like, oh my goodness. I never would have thought of this story. Ever. But it makes absolute sense. It's one of the reasons why Mark Waid is such a great writer. He can take these characters that we have seen a dozen times in a dozen different adventures and still come in here and think of something brand new for them that does move them forward, that does feel like a logical progression of that character. So he has basically not used up all of his magic, but all of his connections to magic. So he talks to Tony Stark because like, well, Tony, you've had your own personal demons before. How did you build yourself back up? Like, I'm down in the dumps right now. How do you lift yourself back up? And Tony says, yeah, man, it's exhaustion. And I don't mean like emotional exhaustion. I'm talking operational exhaustion. I'm talking about what happens to a machine. I'm talking about when just a machine is just completely beaten out and you gotta replace the battery in it. How do you recharge? And he would say, well, you know, I would typically go into another dimension and recharge, but I can't do that anymore. And Tony comes up with this idea that, yeah, this is such a creative new thing to bring up with Doctor Strange. He basically says, why don't you just go to another planet? Yes, you're the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth. Aren't there other Sorcerer Supremes out there? I love this idea that every other planet out there is going to have their own magical guru. And he's like, okay, I've got a spaceship. I'm going to teach you how to fly this thing. And he tells them it's like flying a car. And they bring up this fact that Doctor Strange has an accident where he could no longer use his hands because of a car accident. And it's like, oh shoot, man, delving into his history, delving into the motivations in his brain. That's what you do with characters. That's great. And so yeah, this thing ends with him going off into space with no magic, looking for the other sorcerers out there who could possibly recharge him. Man, this is exactly what I want out of a Doctor Strange book. I am so excited to read the rest of this because it's something brand new, it's something original, but it feels like Doctor Strange. As I said, love the Jason Aaron run, love the Donny Cates run, but for different reasons than why I want to love a Doctor Strange book, this feels like a Doctor Strange book to me. Next up is Immortal Hulk. Now, when I was talking about the description for this book, I said it sounded like Al Ewing was trying to pitch this book as a horror series, and I was totally okay with that for two reasons. One, I'm a big horror junkie, in case you couldn't tell from the Evil Dead chainsaw arm just sitting right there. But the other reason why I was okay with it was because that's how the Hulk started out. There are a couple of Marvel heroes from back in the early 60s that they didn't really start off as superheroes. They start off more riding the coattails of the 1950s and 1960s monster sci-fi comics like Ant-Man and Hulk. Both started off not really as being superheroes, but just like, oh my goodness, it's a monster comic. It's a sci-fi comic about some guy who shrinks down and now he's trapped with all these ants. How will he survive? Hulk, oh, he is this big giant monster creature, but he's trapped in the body of this tiny man. How will he live with the monster inside of himself? it felt like he was trying to return back to that, because one of the things about this series is that they're returning back to the classic Hulk origin, that he no longer turns into the Hulk when he gets mad. He turns into the Hulk when the sun goes down. Yeah, originally the Hulk did not turn into the Hulk because he got angry, but as soon as the sun dropped, he turned into the Hulk. That's a classic monster trope right there. As soon as it gets dark outside, the monsters come out. That's what they're doing with this, and this thing opens up with the Hulk in a convenience store and is getting robbed, and this little kid gets killed, the guy behind the register gets killed, and the Hulk is about to transform, but then he gets killed. But then that night, in the morgue, sun goes down, Bruce Banner's corpse turns into the Hulk. Yeah, this is a really creepy take on this character, and as I said, it opens up not with the Hulk saving these people in the convenience store. He sees a little kid get killed in there. This book is coming in here and going, the Hulk is trapped in a messed up world, and he is just going out there as pure rage to take apart this messed up world. Because yeah, he goes in there and just completely wrecks the guys who ended up pulling this heist on the convenience store. But he does it not in the big, oh yay, superhero stopping the villain way, but more in the, oh my god, there's something outside. There's something on the roof now. Oh, did anybody see Johnny? Where'd Johnny go? Oh my goodness, he was here a second ago. Big fist comes in through the window, rips someone out of the wall. What the hell was that? Just start shooting in any direction. Yeah, the Hulk is a monster again. And I'm okay with that. Again, kind of like talking about with Doctor Strange. It goes back to the history of this character, and it captures the spirit of this character, but it's doing something new with him. We have not actually seen the Hulk as a monster in a long time. I'm talking decades. We have not seen that. And I'm really interested to see this version of the monster horror Hulk in a modern day setting. But he's also kind of the intelligent Hulk again, which again, that's how the Hulk was when he was first created. It was not Hulk smash, he was just a brute who wanted to punish people. He's gone back to being that. But they are leaning further into the horror element of this than they ever have, and I'm totally on board with that. And also, just speaking of how this book is leaning into the origins of this character, again, it's being written by Al Ewing. Al Ewing, I say this every time I'm talking about the dude, he has an encyclopedic knowledge of the history of Marvel Comics. If they ever put out there another one of those big, The Complete History of Marvel Comics books, just let him write it. Just let him, just spew everything out of his mouth and let someone just ghostwrite the whole thing as he's saying it. He could tell you from start to finish how the Marvel Universe exists. And yeah, he comes in here and references specific stuff from the Hulk's past, and I really enjoyed seeing that. But also, he has introduced in there a reporter and a cop who are trying to chase the Hulk down. Love it! I am loving these two characters. I am loving watching them trying to go after the Hulk. I'm loving watching their interactions. Because again, yes, the Hulk needs someone chasing him down, but he's not the big superhero monster anymore, so you can't have the military coming in there with tanks. Tanks find a monster? That's not scary. A reporter and a cop trying to find out the secret of this monster? That can be pretty chilling. That can actually be spine-tingling there. I am actually really enjoying watching their chase to try and find the Hulk. And the last book that we're going to talk about is Thor, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't think I was going to have a lot to say about this because I've been talking about Jason Aaron's Thor forever. Ever since this channel started up, I was talking about how great the God of Thunder series was. Oh my goodness, I enjoyed that. Oh, the new Jane Foster Thor, really enjoying that. The Unworthy Thor miniseries, really enjoying that. I have loved everything that Jason Aaron has done with Thor. So I was like, am I going to really have anything new to point out in this book? And not exactly, because it's still Jason Aaron's Thor, and I'm still really enjoying it. But there are some new things to bring up, like Thor's new status quo, all the new stuff that they're doing with the character, what's happening to Asgard. And again, I'm actually really digging it, and it kind of ties back into something I was saying a second ago with his run on Doctor Strange. One of the biggest changes to Thor now is that Asgard was destroyed, so now everyone has to find a place to live. And many of the gods are still living in old Asgard because they're trying to prepare for the big War of the Ten Realms, so they're just there constantly working, making new weapons. I love that Thor, because he no longer has Mjolnir, he's got these people just constantly making new weapons for him, but they're not indestructible, and he's still going up against, like, say, the Juggernaut, who destroys a hammer every single time that he gets punched in the face with it. So he just has to have, like, dozens of hammers just coming to him non-stop. Visually, that's awesome. And I think that there's some really creative stuff that you can do with that. Now, the other big change that's going on is that maybe the other people who were living in Asgard, they can't live in old Asgard. So they have rented out a building in the Bronx, and all of them are living there. So you've got all these Asgardian Norse mythological creatures living in a building in the Bronx. As I said, something that defined Jason Aaron's run on Doctor Strange was how Jason Aaron loves to take these bigger, larger-than-life characters and bring them down to Earth. He's literally doing that in this book. He's got Thor's mother living in there, and she's taking care of Volstagg, who he's still in critical condition. He's still in a hospital bed at all times, but he's still living in this building in the Bronx. And you've got Roz Solomon. She's basically their landlord, which you know that's going to be some of the jokes in there. She's the one who's paying for this building, and she wants to make sure that she gets her deposit back on this when all of them leave. So she is having to make sure that they don't destroy the place. I know there's going to be some great jokes that come from that. Jane Foster is helping to look over all of them, but she's also giving Thor all of his assignments. Because another thing that happened when Asgard was destroyed was all of their weapons were just scattered across the earth. So Thor has to now go around and find them all, and Jane's the one who's researching it to find where they might be. I love this new concept. I only wish that, like, at the end of this first issue, we see him in this issue go and gather up 2 of these items. I wish at the end of this we had seen, like, just a giant list of all the items he had to get. Like, we just look at it and go, what the heck could that thing be, and where could that end up? Just to kind of give us an idea of the monumental task ahead of him and all the crazy stuff that he might have to end up finding as this adventure goes along. That's the only thing I kind of feel like this issue is missing. I would have loved to have seen something like that in there. But it's not just the Asgardians living in the Bronx who have been brought down to Earth. Thor needs a place to live too, so he's living in Jersey on a fishing boat. Jason Aaron, I brought this up, he's the guy who writes Southern Bastards. He's just a good old boy. He's just a guy from down south who just likes regular folks. Thor living on a fishing boat with his talking hellhound. I freaking love the talking hellhound. Sorry, just thinking about him made me laugh. He's got his talking hellhound, he's got his goat, and the 2 of them are there just guarding all the weapons he's been finding and just chucking in a big pile in his fishing boat. And he gets back to his fishing boat and he's just like, I'm just tired and I'm just gonna sleep in my freaking fishing boat. And I looked at that and went, that is the most southern good old boy thing I can ever imagine Thor doing. Unless Thor enters into a barbecue eating contest, that is the most southern good old boy thing Thor could ever do. I also just realized Jason Aaron's other book, Southern Bastards, is about a southern good old boy beating people to death with a stick. Kind of Thor-like, isn't it? Isn't that kind of like something that him and Thor have in common there? Isn't that interesting? So yeah, I'm loving all the new stuff he has set up here. I am loving seeing where all the Asgardians are. I'm loving this idea of Thor just living on a boat in Jersey. I'm hoping that they don't just instantly destroy that and we actually get to see some of that going on. I'm also kind of enjoying the fact that Marvel is moving so many of their characters to Jersey. Rent in New York is just getting too high, so they're all just moving over there. Because you've got Miss Marvel over there. I know Nadia Pym is located in Jersey now, and now Thor's living there. You can bring all those guys together. I'll have them all do one big team up. But this thing ends with Loki having an exchange with Thor, and God, Jason Aaron just writes such a good Loki. His Loki is fantastic, and a lot of the reason why he's so good in this issue is because Mike Del Mundo just knows how to draw him. But there's a reason for that. It's because Mike Del Mundo is one of the best artists in the industry right now. And I was mentioning a little earlier in this episode how I feel like one of the problems that Marvel has had over the past couple of years is that they have had amazing artists, but they didn't always put them on the best book for them. And I think Mike Del Mundo is a great example of that, because him on Elektra, stunning, jaw-dropping his work on Elektra. He went on to Weird World. Weird World, fantastic, and one of the reasons it was so good was because of Mike Del Mundo's art. But then they put him on the Avengers, and it was like, you're really good, but your art style doesn't match this story. Like, some of the stuff he did with Kang the Conqueror was really interesting, but that was like for one issue in there. Then they would do other stuff with like the Avengers just kind of like chilling out. It's like, yeah, that's not the kind of thing. He doesn't do chill out art, he does big spectacle art. And now with him on Thor, he's nailing it. That's exactly what he should be doing. I was mentioning how he does the really big fantasy stuff so incredibly well. So I was wondering how well he would capture it on the Thor book. He's capturing it beautifully. He's doing a fantastic job in this book. Even when Jason Aaron takes the fantastic and brings it down to earth, Mike Del Mundo still makes it feel like the fantastic. Like, there are such small details that Mike Del Mundo does. I actually saw this dude doing a sketch once, and he like stopped and restarted the sketch so many times because he wanted to get absolutely perfect. And when you look at his art, yeah, you can tell he's that kind of an artist. He's the guy who wants to get everything exactly right because there's so many little details. Like, there's a fight between the Juggernaut and Thor in here, and Thor's talking about how, yeah, he's not at his full power anymore. He doesn't have Mjolnir anymore. Meanwhile, Juggernaut is supercharged right now, so Juggernaut will punch Thor and you see giant, huge stars breaking off the screen, but then Thor punches Juggernaut and you have little bitty cartoon stars with little faces on them popping out. That is such a small detail, but it's the kind of thing that only Mike Del Mundo would come up with. And yeah, it's one of the things that makes this issue so magical. So yeah, that's the first 6, or in all honesty 7, because I did actually end up kind of talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp in there, books from the new Marvel Fresh Start launch. And I gotta say, Deadpool, yeah, okay, it's still good. It's still good. I did enjoy it. Kind of a tough act to follow. Did have a few critiques in there. But when that's the worst review I can give any of these books, and the other 6 that I talked about today were astonishing, just blew me away, every single one of them, heck yeah, man, that is high praise indeed. And I got news for you. In the next episode coming up later today, I'm kind of going to keep doing the same thing. Marvel Fresh Start is really darn good, you guys. So yes, if you want to see that next episode, make sure that you come back later today for that, in which I talk about the next 6 books. Or you guys can always contact me on Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr with your thoughts at Professor Thorgy, or just leave your thoughts in the comments down below. That's kind of what the comments are there for. And as always, make sure that you share these videos around the web and check out all the other videos that we do on this channel, because we don't just cover comic books, we cover everything from the world of geekery on this channel. In fact, just the other day, we did a massive pitching in video about the idea of a Boba Fett film. Worked long and hard on that one, so I just had to come in here and give it an extra little plug. You guys can click on in just a couple seconds when it pops up right here on the title card. Bye, everyone.